True leadership is not defined by rank, but by our daily commitment to guiding and supporting one another. Welcome to Tradies Who Lead, the podcast about everyday leadership for everyday legends. I'm Ashley Baltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade, and your host. Let's introduce our next guest. Described as a forward thinker and motivational guru, Raman is a distinguished keynote speaker, performance coach, and diversity facilitator. His mission is to inspire others to transform their lives and reach their full potential. Raman began his career as a millwright maintenance mechanic apprentice and has since carved out an inspiring path. As co-founder of a premier apprenticeship program, Raman's mentorship has guided many to achieve state, industry, and national awards. Notably, he mentored Louise Azzopardi, the first female gold medalist at the World Skills Competition in 2012. With over 25 years of experience in mechanical, automotive, electrical, and marine engineering, Raman has successfully led skilling projects across Australia, New Zealand, India, and China. His 13-year association with World Skills Australia and his role as an international expert have established him as a leader in vocational education around the globe. Thanks for joining me on the podcast, Raman.
It's a pleasure, Ash.
Where did your leadership journey begin and what does leadership mean to you?
I think if I go back to school, I think I was in the Boy Scout movement and I was the petrol leader in there. So that was my first taste of leadership and leading people to a common goal and also keeping them motivated.
So you saw yourself as a leader quite young. What did leadership mean to you while you were young and how has that changed, I guess, now with more life experience and more years under your belt?
I think leadership meant to me, even at that young age, was to show up and behave in a way that people want to do what you want them to do. Also, taking them along a journey, which they will also enjoy along the way, but then also have some goal and aspiration. Now, it could be as simple as building a tent in the record time to setting the campsite, and everything was a competition there. So you need to hold people's hand where needed, push them where needed, but then also leave time for celebration.
I'd like to dig into this concept of showing up a bit more. We all say that leadership is about showing up, but what does that actually mean? Like, what does that look like to you?
But showing up to me is the belief the people you are leading or even your friends for that matter have that you will show up when needed. Now that could be in physical form, in person, it could be over a phone call, or it could even be present on social media. And something like LinkedIn where one of your mentees or your team members put a good post, then you make sure you like it and you comment it to take that post a bit further. Increasing the outreach, it could be giving a comment which brings out a certain aspect of that post even better. So showing up could be in many forms, but very succinctly, it's being there for that person who expects you to be there.
Definitely. And it really highlights how showing up is very much about how we impact other people, how we influence or support and uplift other people. We also need to show up for ourselves. And that's something that, we showing up for ourselves is holding ourselves accountable and living by our values. And that can seem quite wishy-washy, but it's really critical for our own integrity. You mentioned mentorship, and I, having known you for quite a few years, know that being a mentor and mentoring other people is something you're very passionate about. Why is it so important to you?
Being a beneficiary of good mentoring in my life, it will be rather selfish not to give it to others. So I come from a very small country town in India, and to make it to Australia and do reasonably well is because of some good guidance, some good mentoring. And most of that was very selfless mentoring. People have wholeheartedly given great advice at the right time. And it sometimes have come from very unexpected situations. So I think I can see how magical that concept is. And Ash, how eager I am to tell people even sometimes unsolicited mentoring because, somebody saw that potential in me. They didn't wait for me to approach them. They thought, I think it's my duty to give this advice to this young lad. And then I think I tend to do this for everyone, wherever possible. whether they like it or not. Just joking.
Your career is in a very different spot now than where you started, being a tradie, an apprentice on the tools in a blue collar environment. What did mentorship look like while you were on the tools versus what mentorship looks like for you now?
Very, very good question. So, mentorship then was, as they call, taking someone under the wing. For example, as an apprentice, when I entered the workshop as on the job, what they call in-plant training. So you go to a training school, do a lot of upfront training, and then you go and do rotations across different workshops. So as a person there wanting to perform but anxious about the environment, so someone taking the lead to then welcoming you and guiding you through that, and even empathizing and saying, hey, I was there like you are now, and I understand how you're feeling. That meant a lot. It meant a lot, and it added more value than the actual skills training. And you wanted to work with that person, even if that person wasn't the superstar technician in the workshop. You always gravitated towards that person. And I think that's how it was. But also, there was another flavor to that back in my days as an apprentice. Now I'm sounding very old, and I am. But it was very rite of passage kind of thing. But even those things made us what we are, because in some instances, being a teenager back then, you might not dare to push yourself so much, which that strictness did. It also was an element of discipline, because sometimes you are a teenager having long nights and showing up to work the next day. So that fear, that healthy fear, kept us going and not messing up. So I think it's a healthy mix of strictness versus empathy. What's now is more consultative. And I think it's probably the reflection of the society today, where people are very careful in approaching people. But it's also in a very good spot. The society has good language, which is helpful towards mentoring and communication regarding mentoring. So back in my time, it was more direct, and you have to read between the lines. Whereas mentoring nowadays has a very rich vocabulary available to them. There is a lot of guidance available through social media, where people now know how to express certain emotions, certain advice in the most right way. And also, I think a lot of media come to the rescue. You can use a lot of graphics, illustrations, and stuff like that. So mentoring back then was more hands-on and direct, and now it's more formal, but at the same time, very well communicated.
I think you highlighted something really interesting around how the people skills of a mentor or the people you worked with as an apprentice was almost more important than their technical skills, which I think being tradies feels like quite a unusual prioritization of skills, because we're paid by the hour, we're paid to get a job done, whether that's to build something, fix something. Why does it matter if we're kind or generous or thoughtful? And it's definitely something that I think we all have a lot to learn, and historically the work environment has made us feel like maybe those aspects or skills aren't as important. What would be your advice to someone who is a mentor or aspiring to be a mentor in terms of how they can support the people around them, whether they're informal mentorship arrangements or they are just acting as a mentor and guide for an apprentice they're teaching or someone they have brought under their wing?
There's no one size fits all, but over the years, I've come to know a few things which I would like to share and which I've used personally. I think very critical that you work towards building trust very early on. And for that, you have to have really good communication skills. Now, communication skill is a vast topic, but the way I try to implement it is by understanding how they understand. Okay. Now, if it's a language barrier, then you would probably be a bit more sensitive towards cultural methods of communication and starting with simple question answers, small talk, and stuff like that. So communicate, build trust, establish the purpose of that relationship. Sometimes it can become very formal. So try to keep a healthy mix of informality. Humor always works. Keeping it simple always works. Communicate, build trust, and then take it towards a direction where you also give the mentee a feeling that you're also learning from them, which is a fact. You try to remove the training wheels very quick, but then I think stay on track, but then make it more give and take, because that really then blurs the boundaries. And then at one point they feel so comfortable in seeking advice that then it becomes almost like a well-oiled machine. Being a teacher, I will reinforce the points. So build trust. For that, you need good communication, and then obviously come to a point where it then becomes a give and take.
You have spent a lot of time in the vocation education sector as a trainer and teacher, which is a natural extension of your passion for mentorship, I would imagine. And you've spent a lot of time in the vocational education space in the South Pacific region. From that more international viewpoint of the trade sector and teaching, training, and mentoring, what opportunities for collaboration do you see emerging in that space?
Globally, there is a very strong focus on skill development. It is skewed more towards university education and management. Now, the pendulum is shifting back because there's a high shortage of skills. Yeah, so skilled people are very, very extinct in most places now. Most countries are working towards developing skilled workforce very, very rapidly. So the opportunities for collaboration is to use your best practice and share it with someone who doesn't have, but also use their best practice to then develop something else here. Now, a good example of that would be India, which I tend to now do a lot of work as well, and China. So if you look at the three countries, India has a very large population of young people and a lot of passion for education. Australia has great structure of vocational education, which they have fine-tuned over the years. So you are a best practice deliverer of skill training, and you've got a population who wants skills training, so they can work together. And then, having said that, now the Prime Minister of India is saying that we want to make India the exporter of skilled people. So they want to train people enough for the country, but then also create a lot of surplus which they can export. And Australia is aiming to becoming the global skills training provider. Now, if you look at China, China is a fast mover. So both countries can learn from China how to move quickly, how to adapt quickly, and how to do things at a larger scale. So invest heavily into development, both skills and behavior, right? So I see China investing into skills development, but also developing behaviors and attitude. All of these three countries can learn from each other very, very effectively.
For someone who's at the ground level, maybe still on site, either mentoring or leading a team, are there any best practices that you've observed that an individual could apply in their own workplace to support the next generation of tradies?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunity for tradies to learn advanced skills. There are a lot of short courses available. Now, for example, in Australia, there is a EV skill set. So any mechanic who is light vehicle, heavy or plant can attend a 4-day training and acquire the skills which can make them an EV technician and build on that. But also cross-skilling into things where they see a growth in a sector. So those skills don't require years and years and years of training. Now, there is a AI which can be effectively used by tradies now, from estimation to finding the best way to repair or fix something to making procedures. Lots of things can be done using AI. So those are the things which people can focus, but also focus on training the next generation. Because if you invest into that next generation person, I think you will create a larger workforce which will work towards an improvement in the economics of training tradespeople, but also then contributing to the country's growth. Because everything we do is made by skilled technicians, people, machinists, whatever. So if we can draw good focus onto that sector, more and more young people can come into this. And then from this, if need be, they can move towards more tertiary education and become leaders. So there is a lot of opportunity for people to be career tradespersons, but also then emerge as leaders in the industry and even innovators in the industry.
That idea of the way that someone can show up for their team is through their own learning journey, and the ability to, if they increase their knowledge and they increase their skills, that's then knowledge and skills that even without necessarily trying, they will pass on. And then if they become intentional about teaching the next generation, that level of knowledge transfer goes up again. More than anything, most apprentices come in as a blank slate when they start their apprenticeship, and it's really up to us as tradespeople able not only to role model healthy behaviors as tradies, but also to role model the process of continually learning, because I don't think I've ever met a tradie who knew everything when they qualified. More than anything, they probably realized, oh, I'm actually still at square one of my career.
And one thing which I find is not talked about enough is the transferability of trade skills. I can relate so much to what I'm doing, even in strategizing things or creating vision boards and even writing processes. I can really relate back to the 3 years of apprenticeships of what I learned then. It is not what I learned then, the way I learned is so transferable. So there is an element of teaching to self. But there is also an element in teaching yourself to learn from a diverse range of teachers. And all of that is transferable to whatever you do in life. And we often don't talk about that because trades training is very focused training opportunity which gives you so much of confidence in doing things in life. And I'm not here to comment on university education, and it's very comprehensive, but for a university graduate to develop a confidence of doing something which can be called a competency takes a long time, and provided they stay into that vocation, which again is very sometimes not likely, whereas the likelihood of that happening in the trade sector is high. So you're able to finesse that. And I think I will use a very, very simple example. If you start cooking barbecue and then you keep doing that, you can achieve competency on that very long, in a very, very, very short time. But that then improves your confidence on cooking anything because you understand temperature, you understand quantity, you understand how to select the raw materials and stuff like that. So trades give you all of that in a compressed manner, but also trades gives you workplace exposure relevant to that training very, very quick.
And it's that workplace exposure which builds confidence and that repetition.
100%. And also interacting with a large range of stakeholders. And it can be from the person you're working with on the floor right through the vice president who's come for the workshop walk, and then you can communicate with them as well. So the feeling that you're doing something very important comes very quick in a trade sector.
For someone who might be mentoring apprentices and doesn't have the time or the availability to do a trainer and assessor course, what, I guess, practical tips can you give to someone about how they could teach or train better? Because I think it's something that as apprentices, we go from being the learner to teaching the next apprentice very quickly, and no one really teaches us how to teach. So from your years of experience and the number of people you've worked with, what are the most practical ways that someone can actually get better at that skill set?
First of all, you need to have the desire to teach and the intent to do it the right way. So if you can find that, I believe where there's a will, there is a way. So some of the things I would really do is reflect on how you learned best. So think of 3 or 4 or 5 good example, and that will give you some handy tips. In trade sector, it's slightly easier because you can show and tell. You can show them and then you can let them have a go, and then they can refine that and give them the practice. But if you're teaching conceptual things, try to bring them to a graphical nature. Maybe draw something. Use examples they understand. Questioning what they know and what they think about it, understanding where they are is important so that you can take them where they need to be. It can be a bit frustrating if the person is not picking up. Then more than likely is the teacher's responsibility to see why. And breaking things into small chunks is also very important. Also encourage, in today's day and time, a lot of things are available on YouTube and social media. So try to give them a feeling that I will teach you to the best of my ability what I know best. But this is not the best things probably in the world. So there could be other best practices too. But then we have a certain requirement we have to meet. So it could be a procedure, it could be a guideline. So we say these are the performance criteria, this is how we get there. And this is the tolerance. So a few things which I spoke about is, yes, break into small chunks, communicate well, show and tell, let them practice, and then say, yep, you've done it well, now you can keep building on that. If you are teaching conceptual things, then you will have to somehow find a practical show and tell example of that and use analogies as much as you can.
And the intention is the foundation of any good teacher, because I can imagine it takes a lot of patience. And if you do have someone who's struggling to learn, it is adapting and trying different ways to communicate something until they have that moment where they go, that makes sense now.
Yes, and I think get off the pedestal. If you think you are an ace teacher, get off the pedestal very quick, because new generation is very well informed.
And I guess the student is your metric of success, not your perception of your teaching skill.
100%, 100%. Do ask for feedback. Show that you are human, and you feel that you are also vulnerable as well, and that sort of creates a level of comfort that I'm learning from a human and not an expert robot.
The final question I ask every person on the podcast is around their 30-second advice. So if you could give advice in 30 seconds about how any tradie or any person in the trade environment could show up as an everyday leader, what would you tell them?
Question yourself why you are doing what you're doing. And if you don't find an answer to that, don't do it. But then why you're doing it, then commit to it fully. Because committing to that is going to take you places. It's going to take you places to where you want to be. If you believe in a vocation, which is a trades-based vocation, and if you like traveling, that profession or vocation will take you to travel. If you like to have a good family life, that vocation will give you a family life. If you want to use that vocation as a source of income purely to supplement something else, for example, you want to be a musician, but you want a good paying job to support that can support that. So this is this one key you have to anything you want in life.
We've definitely covered a lot around the mentorship and the teaching space today, and about how showing up for ourselves actually means backing ourselves and committing to what we're looking for in life and in our careers, and understanding our purpose, whether that's about our purpose to teach the next generation or our purpose to make the most of our trade career. Thank you so much for sharing your time and insight, Raman. There's definitely a lot, I imagine, that we can all take away from how we can show up as leaders, but also show up as mentors, as people who are still learning ourselves and are trying to improve and grow as well, no matter what stage we're at in our careers.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you all the best for this podcast, and I learn a lot of things from you as well. So wish you all the best. I look forward to hearing other people and other guests who come onto your podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Tradies Who Lead on your preferred podcast platform. Don't forget to like, share, or leave a review. It helps us bring you the stories you want to hear. You can connect with Raman via his social media platforms, all listed in the bio. You can also follow the podcast on the socials at Tradies Who Lead for highlights, sneak peeks, and more. Thanks for joining me for this episode. A new episode drops every fortnight, so watch out for the next everyday leadership legend coming to you soon.